All right. All right, everyone. Welcome tonight. We got Phil Rowley here. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's starting to get cold. Winter is setting in. So tonight's presentation is pretty applicable because it's just starting to be spring and we'll soon be into early summer down there in Argentina.
Nice. Well, that's the topic tonight. We've obviously got Phil Rowley here. He's been doing a lot of stuff with us. The Littoral Zone Podcast just got done with the Henry's Lake trip to the Henry's, fishing that area.
Yep.
But tonight you're going to focus on Jurassic Lake, something you've done, you've been to a number of times. You're going to talk about what it's all about. We're going to get into that a little bit. But yeah, just give us a heads up. What's been new? Give us a heads up on the last couple months here.
Oh, it's been busy, as you said. I was filming with the new fly fisher in August down in Monument, Colorado. That was pretty cool. Got to also sit in and have a complete backstage access to the Caveman Music Festival, which is pretty cool. Got to see the Wallflowers. They were the final act, so that was pretty cool to be right up.
Bob Marley, or not Bob Marley.
Oh God, now I've got
Bob Dylan's son.
Yeah, Jacob Dylan. So that was pretty cool. Dylan, Then I had a Stillwater school that I do each year at Corbett Lake Lodge in British Columbia. Then I had our school we just did down in Island Park area with Mike from Drift Lodge and Outfitters and Darren Huntsman, who's been a guest on your podcast, joined us as well. And then last guide trips and then I'm next week off to British Columbia to film another episode for the new fly fisher. And I was hoping to get some more fishing in before the end of the month, but it looks like winter here in central Alberta is coming a little sooner than predicted. So I fear my local Stillwater season may be done.
Yeah, that's it.
Fly tying.
Fly tying time. Nice. Well, talk a little about tonight. What are you going to cover here?
We're going to talk about one of my favorite places. Probably most people have heard Jurassic Lake. If you're a Stillwater angler, it is arguably the most consistent place to catch the largest rainbow trout in the world. I've been doing hosted trips down there every year for the past 6 years. A little skip 1 year due to the pandemic. But I've been going down there as well. I'm also starting to do trips for Golden Dorado as well. So I'll be going down there again in December of this year, taking a group of people. It's the World Series, the Stanley Cup, the World Cup of Stillwater fly fishing down there. And we're going to talk about all aspects of that, how to get there, what to expect, accommodations, travel, the gear you'll need. Of course, we'll talk about the fishing, the flies, and try to cover as much as I can in an hour or so and answer any questions anybody might have about going down there themselves or perhaps joining me on a future trip or even the trip I've got going in December if they still got time and money.
Awesome. Well, I think what we're gonna do is just jump into it. You have a presentation to share here. We will, if anybody has questions, you can post those as we go. I'll field those and then we'll have some questions. We'll hold questions till the end. And then we'll have a little Q&A right at the end. So do you want to just jump into it and take this one away?
I've got a PowerPoint presentation here that I will flip screens here. I'll flip my button. So
perfect.
Hopefully that showing up now?
Looking great. And I'm going to pop off my video and we'll let
is my video still showing, Dave?
Yeah, just click the video icon and then we'll go.
I will just quickly change that for 2 seconds. I'll get my
Yep. There we go.
Ugly mug out of there, and we'll make this go full screen. And there we go. Malbec Meat and Monsters, named for the wine that's so popular and delicious down there. The meat that is consumed down there, it's definitely a protein-based culture. And of course, the monsters are the trout. So probably, again, as I said, most people have heard about Jurassic Lake or Lago Strobel as its real name is, for the quality fishing, stillwater fishing they have down there for rainbow trout that are truly gargantuan in proportions. They are it's an unbelievable fishery. This is where you can come and get a fish of a lifetime, where 10-pound fish are, I'll be honest, the guides typically will take a picture of a 10-pound fish with you on day one, and then day two, not so much because you're going to get something bigger. Most people exceed their fish of a lifetime within the first few hours of their visit down there, and can get into some true monsters. This is a fishery that began, as I understand it, by a local rancher, an estancia owner that wanted some trout in the Barrancoso River, which is the only river that flows into Jurassic Lake. And some of the fish stayed and most left and went out to see what life was like in the lake. They found a very rich environment to live in, full of scuds, snails, and zooplankton, the primary the three food sources that these trout feed upon. And the rest is history. These trout are originally, as I understand it, McLeod strain rainbows out of California. That were initially taken to a hatchery in Argentina, and these fish are the direct descendants of those first implants from the hatchery in Argentina, and now they have a self-sustaining population of these magnificent fish. So getting there, let's talk about that. Very easy. Flying from North America, you can fly. I typically fly through Houston direct to Buenos Aires. You can go through Atlanta, New York, all the major travel centers. Really easy to book a flight on a travel site such as Expedia or directly through an airline site. So we fly out. Typically, you'll leave North America in the evening, fly overnight to Buenos Aires. It's about, depending where you're coming from, a 9-hour flight. As you wake up in the morning, I typically fly out of Houston through United Airlines. So I'm going down over the Caribbean, down the west coast of South America, kind of hang a left at Santiago, Chile, and you end up coming over the Andes Mountains, which is the view out of my window here as we're descending down into Buenos Aires. When in Buenos Aires, so the trips I do, you go into the lodge on a Saturday and come out on a Saturday. You get 6.5 days of fishing. So we typically start our journey on the Wednesday of the week prior to our arrival, factoring in the overnight flight that lands us in Buenos Aires on Thursday morning, typically early 7:30 to 9 or 10, depending on your airlines. You've just traveled overnight. I know personally I don't sleep all that well on a plane, so I'm a little fuzzy around the edges. So we check into a hotel in the Recoleta area of Buenos Aires, which is very safe. Lots of great restaurants to walk around, lots of great sights to see, a lot of history down there, lots of things to see, unique, you can see the construction of the building in there, very European look to it. Not much North American influence. I think the first sort of North American influence I have seen on my last trips was a Starbucks and a McDonald's is crept onto the market, but everything else is the same. This is one of the sites you can see that's a short walk from the hotel we stay at, and this is a huge mausoleum with lots of unique crypts that you can tour through, and this is where Eva Peron is buried, for example. So lots to see and do in that area. We stay there that Thursday night. And with the trips, I do all of that. I take care of all that accommodation and booking for everyone, including getting you into the hotel, your domestic flights, which we'll talk about in a second, between Buenos Aires and El Calafate to get us down to the Patagonia area of south of Argentina, where Jurassic Lake is based. And also all of your taxi fares. So when you arrive, somebody will be there to greet you, either as a group, depending on when we all arrive, or individually. English-speaking driver take you to the hotel. They'll be ready. Everybody will be there waiting for you. So real peace of mind when you travel. There's lots of other things that are unique to see in Argentina too. I always joke that they're dog lovers down there. I think if you tried to open a spay and neuter clinic down there, you might go bankrupt. But it's common to see dog walkers, other unique things like how they park their cars sometimes. I still don't quite know how somebody got in and out of that spot, but unique things. Again, safe to walk down there, and Really a cool place. Some great food to be had down there as well. Some great local cuisine that is very inexpensive compared to what we feed and eat in North America. And so the next day, Friday, we would fly down to El Calafate, which is about a 3-hour flight through Aerolíneas Argentinas. Again, I work with the lodge to make sure everybody's domestic flight bookings are all taken care of. And so you don't have to do that yourself. And everybody's on the same flight. We're all traveling in a group, so everybody's comfortable with that. Very modern airline. English speak good, obviously speak Spanish and very good English. So very easy to travel around. I do not know much Spanish, at least to have a conversation. I can order some food and get a couple of drinks and have a yes/no kind of conversation, but you don't need to be fluent to travel down there. Very easy to do. So when you get into El Calafate, there's a hotel. We're all booked, ready for you. This is the hotel we stay at there. Just shot a little video of it. Very nice. And just one block off the main street, this is the Quixote Hotel. And El Calafate is kind of a Bavarian looking place in tourism. I always joke that Argentina is so in tune with stillwater fishing. They have real cleaners in every washroom, but that's not a real cleaner. That's a bidet, but just a little humor there. But this is looking down the main street of El Calafate. Lots of neat stores and restaurants and pubs and curio shops, and a lot of ecotourism through there as well. So you'll see Patagonia outfitters and things like that. There's a glacier you can go see. So it's common for guests to extend their stay a little bit in the El Calafate area and go visit the glaciers and Chelton, which is a very popular hiking area. Lots to see and do there. Again, very, very safe to walk and navigate around there. So the next morning, the Saturday morning, we are picked up from our hotel and driven. It's about a 5.5 hour drive up Highway 40 to start with, up to the lodge. So we are driving along there, and always an interesting drive. Lots to see. One of the places we always pull over and have a look is this. If you've ever seen a Paramount movie like Top Gun, and you see the stars circling around the mountain point is Mount Fitzroy, and this is Mount Fitzroy right here in Argentina. So on a clear day, you can see this pretty majestic peak, and everybody gets out and fills their cards on their cameras up or their phone with a few shots of this beautiful sight. Lots of animals to see along the way. These are guanaco, the native llama down there. They are prolific. You will see zillions of them on the drive. So in small groups, you will also see sometimes some foxes that are more of our North American coyote side. This is a red fox. And another thing that's kind of cool to see are these. These are rhea. These are small flightless birds related to the ostrich. That's a male with all of the young'un for the year. And you can see as they run, if you've ever watched any of the Jurassic World movies, the Jurassic Park movies, they run and look like little velociraptors. And those can run up to 30 miles an hour. So at some stretches, if you see them along the road, they're actually going faster than the van, little minibus that you travel part of your trip up there. So cool little things to see. I always tend to joke with the guests because rhea is so popular with steelhead tires. Dave, as a steelhead fisher, you probably look at rhea with mouth watering. I always joke if anybody sees a fluorescent pink or chartreuse one to stop the bus. We're going to get out and try and get it. So about halfway, 2.5 hours, 3 hours into our journey, we meet up with the lodge trucks coming out with the guests from the previous week. And we do this mid-Patagonia transfer. You can see the countryside around there, very semi-arid, not a lot of trees. There is a bit of wind. I'll talk to that specifically coming on because Jurassic Lake is famous for that. But we get out and do this mid-transfer. The scenery is very similar to, if you're from Canada, the Cache Creek area just west of Kamloops or Eastern Oregon, Western Idaho, that kind of look. Even around Pyramid Lake in Nevada, very similar look to it. So anyway, anybody's gears transferred from the respective vehicles. If they're going back south home again, they're going into the minivan. And for us traveling in, it's all loaded into these Hilux trucks, and off to the lodge we go to finish the journey. And then you pull into the lodge. This is the lodge here, Estancia Laguna Verde, where I stay. It's actually located on Green Lake, Laguna Verde. So the drive to Jurassic Lake is about a 25-minute, 30-minute drive away every day. And the reason I like this lodge is they have access to over 14 miles of lakeshore. The land around the lake is private, and it's pretty rugged. It'd be a tough place to do any kind of DIY trip, as I'll show you in the topography we've got to deal with down there to get there. But in the foreground is kind of the guide shack area and the mechanics, the maintenance shack. In the background is the lodge itself, and a little closer look. It's quite unassuming on the outside. This is the front of it looking in. In recent years, they've built an addition to the backside. This carries on not only from left to right, but also off to the left around where you can see that walkway is another set of rooms as well. And everybody gets their own room. They have daily laundry service. So you don't need to bring a ton of clothes. You simply put your clothes in the laundry hamper in the morning, and when you come home from your day on the water, everything is neatly folded on the bed waiting for you. You have your own washrooms, showers, beautiful massive bed like this, king-size bed, I believe they are. Lots of storage for your gear, plugins, everything you need. Very luxurious accommodation. They also have, the lodge also has a lodge on the other side as well that you can either book, but you could also make an overnight stay. It's not quite as, it's very beautiful and comfortable, but not quite as luxurious as the main lodge. And it would be based more on double occupancy, but you can certainly drive over there. It's about a 45-minute drive by the rugged roads that we go along there. And you could stay and fish those lakes that day, stay overnight, fish the lakes the following morning, and head back to the main lodge as part of your trip as well if you wanted to. The food is spectacular. This is not a place to go and lose weight. The appetizers alone, I always caution people, Argentine tradition is to eat dinner a little later. And so not to gorge yourself silly on the appetizers because you'll spoil your main event. But these just some beautiful food. The desserts are, they're works of art. It's common when dinner is served for everybody to get their iPhones out and take a picture of what they're eating. First class cuisine. One of the things about that's a common of any week is we have an empanada night, which is pretty good. Empanadas are just fantastic down there. And this is asada night where lamb is served and cooked over an open flame. And I remember talking to the chef on the first trip I had booked. They budget about a kilo of meat. That's just over 2.2 pounds of meat per person for that meal. And everybody gets together in the lodge owner Beto's house, and he's sort of standing in the background there. And it's just a feast. Great company. It's kind of towards the end of the week. Everybody's reminiscing about their great trip, the big fish they've caught, the friends they've made, the memories they've made, and it's just a perfect cherry on the icing for a trip down there. A lot of fun. Everybody looks forward to it. And as I mentioned in the title, there is a lot of wine down there. The Malbec vintages are great. I admit the first trip I ever went down, I wasn't much of a wine drinker, but I kind of picked it up because the vintages are so good. I remember taking pictures of all the labels for my wife because she likes some wine, and very hard to find here in North America. In fact, the owner of the lodge has had a number of vintages specifically made for him. So if you like fine wine, this is the place for it as well. So again, all of this is just to give you a measure of the accommodation and the experience you can expect from a food and drink and hospitality and comfort perspective. The other thing you can do if you want to take a break from fishing is go and see these petroglyphs that are about a 35, 40-minute drive away, and pretty unique that people were on this land thousands of years before we were, communicating through artwork like this on the rocks. Very kind of humbling, kind of puts us in place on the world timeline, if you will. But of course, everybody's here for the fishing. So this is standard apparel for your day on your week in Argentina. You are fishing from shore. This is not a fishery you would want to have a boat in. The lake is large and can get very windy, and all of the best fishing is right from shore because that's where the fish are cruising and looking for food. So waders and wading jacket, layered approach to clothing. The waders and wading jacket are primarily for wind and spray protection when the wind comes up, and we will talk specifically to that. Gear is simple, simple, simple. You are fishing from shore, 7 and 8 weight systems, single hand. Switch spay rods are also fun to use and very applicable on certain days. If you fish Pyramid Lake at all in Nevada, you'll probably be familiar with this fishing. You're fishing floating lines almost exclusively. You can bring Versi leaders if you want. You're either casting and fishing flies under indicators, which we'll get into some fly selections for you in a bit, or you're stripping flies as well. You're fishing 9-foot leaders, saltwater style leaders that are abrasion resistant, because you can see the rocks there. They are encrusted in calcium. This lake is very alkaline, very rich, perfect for growing big productive lake for growing big fish. Just some tippet, not a very comprehensive selection of flies. This is a totally different fishery than anything you might have experienced in North America. Perhaps the closest fishery is Nevada's Pyramid Lake. There are no weed beds in this lake. There are no chironomids. There are no damsels. There are none of the traditional food sources you see on productive lakes that I'm familiar with in Western North America, Canada, and the United States that I fished. Very simple selection, so don't need to bring a ton of extra gear. I would bring extra lines. The lines I use most often are Rio's outbound short floating line. I would bring typically I bring a couple of, this year I'll be going down, I'll be taking 2 8-weights with me and a 7-weight switch, one of the new ambassador switch tuck, a couple of the switch chucker lines, and the Rio outbounds, and I'll have an extra, because the first year I went down, I wasn't paying attention to my loose line, and the surf kind of pounded it into the rocks and between the crevices, and I ended up having to break it to get it out. And that's about the only way you're going to damage anything down there. Just a backup. We're 5.5 hours away from El Calafate, so there's no local fly shops around. Although the lodge does have a limited amount of gear on hand to help out. Should something happen, they can help fill in the blanks for you. So with the trips I do a number of Zoom calls prior to the trip, and we have good discussions about gear and what to bring. And again, most of my people that come first time on these trips tend to overpack, both on clothing and especially on gear, and it's just not necessary. Wading boots are something to think about. You want good ankle support. You are walking, on rocks at times, and cleats just for a little added grip. That's what the guides wear. So when in Rome, do as the Romans, as they say. If you're a wading staff isn't a bad idea. Some of the beaches are very smooth. Sometimes you're just standing on rock. Other times there are small rocks you just want to navigate through. So nothing wrong with bringing a wading staff, but not 100% necessary. This is your taxi for the week. It's the Toyota Hilux. These things are tanks. They will go anywhere. Diesel powered. Your rods are up on the rod racks as we travel around. You can put your gear in the back of the box or in the back seat. And quite often you are fishing with just the rod in your hand, a small travel box of flies in your wading jacket, maybe in your sling pack on your back, or a waist pack. But most of your gear, all your extra stuff, layers, you can just throw into the back of the truck and go get it as necessary. You know, sometimes you're barely a 2-minute walk from the vehicle. Other times you can walk quite a ways if you want. But again, you don't need to be bringing a lot of stuff with you, and you don't need to ladle, weigh yourself down like a pack mule with all your gear. You can use the vehicle as a base camp for you. Your guides down there are very knowledgeable. They are great anglers. With any trip, your trip will go 100% better if you learn to listen to your guides, right? So always listen to your guides. They're great. They speak good English. They know their stuff, and the guide ratio is 1 guide for every 2 anglers. So you get that personal attention, and these guys are gazelles on the rocks. It's amazing what the things they will do to make sure that once you hook that fish, you'll get to land it and get that picture for a lifetime. Great bunch of guys. They've been there a long time, a lot of them. And, I've become good friends with quite a few of them. So they're there every year, and they really know the waters well. The guides communicate. You can see Martin, the head guide here, with the antenna sticking out of his hands. They work very well as a team. They communicate with each other regularly. They use those trucks to drive to different locations along the lake shore that have unique names like Camelot, Calitas del Moro, Puesto Cliffs, Dry Fly Bay, all these unique names that you get to know. And if the fish are in an area, they will get a call and everybody will head over there. And it's pretty unique. It is not unusual some days to be standing and seeing hundreds of fish out in front of you. It's pretty incredible. But first, typically when you get there, you've arrived about midday. You'll get checked into your rooms. They will clean your waders for you, bleach them, just clean them up for invasive protection. And then you'll have lunch, typically flatbread pizza that's just really good. And then you will be taken off to fish one of the local lagunas for the afternoon. And that's another benefit of where I stay at Estancia Laguna Verde, is not only do we have access to Jurassic Lake itself, but also these smaller lagunas, which offer some pretty darn good fishing themselves. These lakes are very productive and grow trout very quickly. Some of the trout can grow especially big. This was one I took on a small balanced leech, literally a rod length from shore. And this is Petrados, one of the lagunas. And these fish are massive. They're, pushing 10 pounds plus already, and you haven't even got to Jurassic Lake yet. So this is a great way to start your trip, get the bugs out, get a chance to work with your guide, see what you're capable of in the conditions, all that. So they're all trying to do this to ensure you have the best trip possible. Laguna Verde itself, and that laguna is right adjacent to the lodge, a short walk down a slight incline, and you're at the lake. And this lake holds not only rainbows, but still has some brook trout in it and a few brown trout scattered in it. Rainbows are the predominant species in Laguna Verde. The next day, you're going to go to Strobel, Jurassic Lake. It's about 12 miles long and about 7 miles wide, so it's a big body of water. And when you get first view of Jurassic Lake, it's pretty breathtaking. From when I first went there, it's a lake I'd always wanted to visit. It was sort of a lake of dreams, and I got to see it for the first time. It's like, wow, I'm really going to get to fish this place and see. The terrain, as you can see, is quite rugged. It's in a cordillera. So again, this is not a place you'd want to hike down because the hike down would not be fun, and the hike up at the end of the day would be beyond not fun. So again, your mode of transportation is down the roads the lodge has cleared through all these rock piles so you're driving along these roads going to all these different locations. You can see the impact of the calcium in the water from the spray from the wind that occurs down there from time to time has encrusted these rocks in calcium, and some of the smaller ones you can kick and they'll break open like an Easter egg. The waters are gin clear. You can see fish cruising around, and the size of some of them is kind of scary, how big some of these fish you're going to see. Fish well in excess of 10, 12, 15, 18, 20 pounds cruising around. And quite often, after a strong wind that's churned up the primary food source in the lakes, the freshwater shrimp or scuds, these fish are gliding in water, sometimes barely enough to cover their back, it seems, and feeding on those scuds that have been knocked loose from all the crevices and holes in the rocks, and just gliding through effortlessly, not even moving, and just inhaling these things as they go. I had a day last trip where it blew pretty good for 2 days. And then the third day, it was relatively calm like this. And there was so many fish in front of us. It was unbelievable just how many fish had gathered there to feed. And it was almost a fish a cast to 15, 18 pounds until lunch, which is typically at 2 o'clock. And my arm was tired, to say the least. If you've never fought a fish that big before, they don't come in easy. They give a very good account of themselves. Running, tail walking, unbelievable. So this is also as well, you fish other places where you're just standing on the rocks and casting. Ideally, the guides do not really want you to cast straight out, but would rather prefer an almost parallel approach, because those fish are cruising, as I say, very shallow, right along the edges of the rock, sometimes barely a rod length away from shore. So you don't need to be any kind of hero cast or anything like that. Lunch is typically served at 2 in the afternoon. Everybody gathers, the guides prepare lunches for you, a little bit of wine if you like, or other refreshment, and then you're back out on the water again. And then you typically finish up about 7:30 at night, the light's still out, and then back to the lodge, time for a shower, change some clothes, have another refreshment, and appetizers start, and dinner, and then just relaxing for the evening. The lodge has full Wi-Fi, so you can stay in touch at home through WhatsApp, FaceTime, email, whatever. Do all of that, and all of the rooms have Wi-Fi access to them, so very comfortable again. Of course, Jurassic Lake is known for its wind, and that's what churns the food up. And I don't lie to anybody about it. You are probably going to, and I'll show you some video here of some wind you're going to experience. You'll be amazed at what you'll can accomplish. You are never asked to cast into the wind, and it's this wind that really gets the food chain going, that gets these big fish, gets that food, again, the primary food source are scuds, out of the rocks, out into the water where the fish can consume them. But you can see how shallow it is here. You'll see fish cruising in very shallow water, just like this guy right here. That's a fish that's well over 12, 15 pounds, just cruising the shoreline, looking for food, very leisurely. Looks like they're barely moving, a very happy fish, and a common sight on there. And the guides have expert eyes for picking these fish up, and after a few days on the water, you'll be able to pick these fish up too. Sometimes they're cruising so close to shore, you have to back up to get a fly in front of them, because they're literally almost at your bootlaces. So another thing you can do is, I mentioned the Barrancoso being the primary river flowing into the Jurassic Lake itself. If you want to do a little river fishing, you certainly can. There's always a head of trout in the Barrancoso. This is where the main spawning for the lake takes place, where juveniles start out their life. Some of them may stay in the river for a longer period of time. Some of them head out the river right away. Some of them head out a few months later, almost kind of like summer run, winter run, steelhead approach. And there's always a good size of fish in here. So if you want to come up here, it's a great way to get out of the wind a little bit if it's a windy day, and fish the area. And the river can be, in the spring months, December, November, December into January, February, the river can be running at high flows. Of course, in their fall months, it runs a little lower as well, but there is some huge fish to be had in some very confined spaces. This is their fall flows, which would be our March, April. I fished the lake both in October, November, December, and April. I do prefer the December timeframe when I'm going now. I jokingly say, if for no other reason, just to give yourself enough time when you come back home to get some grasp of what a normal trout is in North American still waters as compared to these monsters. If you come home after a trip in April, sometimes you might find it hard to get charged up about a 4 or 5, 3-pound rainbow in your local waters. Now, when the river's low like this, it's very technical. You can see the fish, they can see you. We get them on small nymphs, we get them on streamers, and you can get them on mouse patterns as well. So that's a lot of fun to swing a mouse through some of these holes and watch a big fish come up and take that mouse pattern. They're very aggressive when they're in the river, and very much worth at least a half day during your trip experiencing it. Typically, as the groups rotate through, the guides will take you at least a half day. Some of the groups really fall in love with the Barrancoso and want to do that multiple times in their trip, and they're certainly welcome to do so. So the fish themselves, what makes them so big and such an interesting fishery? And again, they're just beautiful specimens, well-fed, fat, healthy, and it's these things: scuds, freshwater shrimp. That is the primary food source. They also feed on zooplankton and small snails as well. So if you're thinking about bringing big streamers to this, you certainly can, but most of the flies we're using, and I'll show you flies in a bit, are small. Your common trout flies you are using on your local lakes will also work very well down in Argentina here. But these are small scuds. You can see how tiny they are in the palm of my hand, and I think they stay that way because the big scuds never get a chance to be big before they're food. So these fish are constantly consuming. I joke that when you're that big, you're not picky. You eat everything. You have a big biomass to keep going, and you need fuel to do it. You have a metabolism that needs constant attention. So when it comes to flies, again, although there's no leeches in the lake, leech patterns are very popular, but I'll walk through right now some of the patterns you want to consider, or pattern styles. Leech type flies, like simple zonkers, the upper fly is called a Brody's squirrel. After a guest who I spent my first trip with down there, that's all he fished. A little zonker style pattern. It looks like a leech. The bottom fly is on my YouTube channel. It's called Nano's Leech. It's designed by one of the guides at the lodge, Nano, who is an outstanding fly fisher and fly tyer. Designed this pattern, a very good pattern for North American waters as well. Small nymphs you want to have on hand, small micro leeches, hare's ears, scud patterns. This is the bottom one is a pattern also you can find on my YouTube channel, as is the top left, that jig hare's ear. This is a Glenn's leech in black on about a size 10 hook with a little red micro cone, marabou body, a little squirrel or rabbit tail. This fish, a friend of mine, Rick, came down, and in 2 hours he had over 40 pounds of trout with 2 fish on this very fly. The one thing you want to consider whenever you're tying flies or bringing flies down there is the hook quality. They have to be stout hooks. You're fishing 16-pound tippet. You're fishing low stretch lines, faster action rods, and obviously a large fish that doesn't want to come and see you when you hook it. So the weak point in the system is the hook. If you bring light wire hooks, they're going to straighten out, and you're going to get frustrated. So make sure you're tying on stout hooks. I tie on Daiichi hooks, so I'm using such hooks as their 1503, their standard heavy wire hook. They're the 1760 and the 1120 scud hooks. But that's just the brand I use. But make sure whatever brand of hooks, or if you buy your own flies, that they are stout enough. The balance leeches we sell on mine and Brian's Stillwater fly fishing store, which are excellent. Jurassic patterns are tied on very stout hooks, and I've taken them down there for a test drive to make sure they can stand up to the rigors that the trout demand down there. You want to make sure you have popular patterns, size 10s and 12s, pheasant tails, hare's ears, copper johns, red copper johns. There's a pattern on my website called the Diablo Rojo, the Red Devil. It's a pheasant tail variation that can work quite well. Prince nymphs, rubber leg prince nymphs, little nymphs work quite well for these large fish. You'd be amazed. Because of the zooplankton, you can actually catch fish on blobs and attractors as well. In North America, we often use blob patterns like this under an indicator to suggest a cluster of Daphnia, or maybe just an attractor, or maybe it looks like an egg, who knows. But the first time I fished a blob down there, I was pleasantly rewarded with an 18-pound rainbow on my first cast. So something to have with you, and when you bring in flies, you're there for a week. Probably 6 of any particular fly is enough. You don't need 30,000 of them. With the groups I do down, I send a suggested pattern list. It's barely, maybe a little 12 to 15 patterns in total. Little micro jigs like this one at the bottom. My Daphnia leech, again, both of these patterns are on my YouTube channel if you want to learn how to tie them, not only for Argentina, but for your local waters. This is a fly that my variation of an Apps worm. I've christened this the shower spider, and this fly gets special mention. I had gone down there 2 trips ago, and I had tied some up just to see if they would work. Now, a traditional Apps worm is tied unweighted on a standard size 10 hook. It was originally tied to suggest chironomid larva, bloodworm. I decided to put it on a jig hook and took one of these tungsten head turner beads, these new tapered tungsten beads you can get nowadays. I wanted it on a jig hook so it would ride upside down. The biggest cause of fly mortality down there is hooking your flies on the rocks that are adjacent to the shoreline. And obviously to have the bead get down there in the surface chop and get my fly down there with the floating line setups we use and strip them back. So the first time I cast this out, I let it sink about 10 seconds, started stripping it back. And as the fly came into view, I had 3 rainbows between 12 and 15 pounds following it. And the rest of my day was pretty good in the subsequent days, because when you strip this thing, those legs are kicking wildly like crazy. And when you hold it up by one leg, it looks like a drowned spider that you might find in the shower somewhere that freaks you out, and you flush it down the drain. So that's where it's got its nickname from, is the shower spider, tied in red. And the legs are super stretch, sexy floss, stretch floss, span flex, that material tied in. Don't forget to have a few dries. These fish will come up and feed on the surface. There's no hatches. The only sort of any bug I found by turning over rocks was a few cased caddis, and I mean a few, like 1 or 2. But big chubby Chernobyl size 6s with white or chartreuse wings are good, because on certain days, certain color wings stand out better. And a few mouse patterns as well, not only for the river, but for the lake. My craziest dropper combination was a mouse pattern with a scud dropper, because these fish will come up. If you're fishing on the indicators, they will sometimes roll up on the indicator, and you'll hear your guide say, let's get the chubby on, because that means there's fish in the neighborhood that are in the mood to come up to the surface. And to watch a 12, 15, 18-pound rainbow stick its head out of the water and eat your chubby on a very slow, lazy, delicate rise, not quite delicate, but certainly not aggressive, just a big head and tail rise, is pretty exciting. And you let them dead drift, you can strip them, and they'll come and take them. Very exciting way to catch a monster trout for sure. Here's a trout in one of the lagunas that took on a mouse pattern. As soon as that fly landed and you started stripping it, and the explosion on that fly that day was pretty spectacular. So have a few mouse patterns on hand, or big Chernobyls, or fat Alberts, those kind of things. You can use them on both the rivers and the lakes with great, dry dropper combinations, or a washing line combination when you've actually got the buoyant fly on the point and another fly off a dropper. Can be very effective at times. Most of the times you're fishing subsurface with small nymphs or balanced leeches, buggers, things like that, stripping. Very simple selection to have. Olives, blacks, purples, some reds, natural colors. Again, you don't need a ton of flies, half a dozen of each type. The balanced leeches I'm fishing are typically size 10s, nothing bigger than that. So your standard trout flies you'd use here in North America. You don't need any gargantuan, multi-articulated flies down there. In my experience, they just don't produce as well as the small trout flies you're used to using on local lakes here in North America. The wind. Not going to lie, it can be windy. Now, if you want, you can fish into the wind. The guides are very good at knowing how the wind is going to impact the lake for that day. But literally, the reason that that person is casting from that rock is those fish are just beyond where the swells start to roll in. Literally a cast length, and you'd be amazed with the right gear and equipment and technique, you can fish in that. So the winds can whip up. I have fished on days where you're fishing in excess of 50-mile-an-hour winds, and that turns the lake into quite the cauldron. This is Laguna Verde. One day the wind is blowing so hard that it is blowing the water up off the lake and splashing that cliffs all around the lake a good 100 feet up. It's something to see. You get very intimate with an app named Windy to see. And some days you will have red to purple in the color code they use for high winds down there. The lodge will rock, but you head out there. You'd be amazed. Again, the predominant wind comes out of the northwest. The shorelines we're fishing are typically your cast. If you're a right-handed caster, it's coming off your left shoulder, or even in extreme situations, is one of the locations we can fish a number of anglers in successfully. It's coming straight off your back. And this is the place here. We call it Monster Bay. It's reasonably protected with the wind at your back. This is Monster Bay here. I left the volume in just I'm not sugarcoating it. It can get windy, but I'll tell you, when the wind is up, the big boys come out to play. These winds churn up the food, give the trout a sense of protection and cover, and they will come in very, very shallow. Literally, you can sort of see the sand drop off just out in front of my friend Steve's rod tip here. Those fish are just cruising beyond that, so well within cast range. And of course, with the wind at your back on a day like this, you can roll cast almost to your backing. And then there are days that are like this, that are flat calm, not a stitch of wind. And these days are very challenging. The fish, you see how clear the water is? Those fish are cruising in there and feeding, of course, but they are very wary of their environment and their surroundings. So they can be challenging to dupe. Any kind of errant cast or aggressive presentation could spook them or just make them wary. They don't really spook off. They just sort of slide off and give you a bad look. They're so big, not too many things can hurt them down there. But this is your typical average day and what you want. A nice rolling chop like this, again, gives those fish a sense of protection and cover, hides your presence, and you can get your flies out again and fish them with and without indicators. And again, the fish cruise very close to shore. There's no need, or even the guides will tell you, don't cast straight out. They want you to try and cast so your flies are coming as close to parallel to the shore or to the edge of the rocks where it falls into deep water as possible, because that's where the fish cruise. And there's some parts of the lake that are, almost like Bahamas tide pools, and the fish will come into very shallow water and feed on the abundant scuds that are in here. Now, when you first go there and you turn over a rock and you expect to see bazillions of scuds going everywhere, you don't. You have to look closely. These are all volcanic rocks, and they burrow themselves right in the holes of the rocks to stay safe and out of trouble, because once they get exposed and the wave action again churns them up, they're toast. They are literally trout food. And that's what makes these trout so big. So there are times here we will fish boobies or a washing line setup with a boobie and a scud pattern because you're fishing into 2, 3, 4 feet of water, and you need to keep your flies up out of the rocks. So a lot of fun when you can see a pod of 50 fish in well over 10 pounds cruising around in here and feeding. You can have some pretty spectacular afternoons fishing what I affectionately call these little tide pools, or not so little tide pools like this one. If you're worried about mobility, don't. If you want to go on a trek over rocks and hills and to find remote shorelines, you certainly can, but you can also fish within 2 seconds of the car. We had a guest there one year, not with me, but had come into the lodge as well, who'd suffered an accident and was a quadriplegic, and he had a mechanized wheelchair, and he went to all the places and others that we didn't, and he got around well and had an outstanding trip. So don't think you have to go walking like a billy goat over all these rocks to have a great trip. It's entirely up to you. They will cater to your needs and your desires, what you want. So many of the best spots are literally get out of the truck, walk 50 feet down to the shore and start fishing. They're all very easily accessed. So again, you come here for this reason, to catch big trout. This is my friend Rick on about his 4th cast to Jurassic Lake. He's been with me twice now, and that fish was literally caught on that little black lens leech, just cast out into about 6-8 feet of water and slowly stripped back, and got this one that was about 19 3/4 pounds. This is another friend of mine, another guest of mine, Jed, who came down from Salt Lake area in Utah. And this one is a 22-pound rainbow taken on a size 12 rubber-legged prince nymph. Beautiful fish, well-conditioned, fat and healthy. This is my friend Steve with, see the different markings on here. I believe he caught this one on a vampire leech, which is again on my site about a size 10. Again, under an indicator. When you're using indicators, you want to use the airlock or a thingamabobber style or indicators, or the Oros, because they're air bubbles, basically balloon type, and they cast rather well in the breezy conditions down there. And you can also of course use a dry dropper configuration as well. This is another one of Jed's fish. I think this is the same 22-pounder from a different angle. The head guide Martin's looking on. He's quite happy. And the nets the guides use are all, you can see it in the background between Martin's legs there, are all measure nets, and they have built-in scales. So fish handling is, it's all catch and release, and they take that very seriously down there. And this is my personal best, a 22-pound fish I caught on a balanced leech, a CBO, literally a rod length of line out from the shore. I watched this fish cruise up. It was about halfway through my trip. I recognized it as a big fish, but you see a lot of them. I watched it descend into the blue a little bit. My indicator went under. I set the hook, and then this thing came cartwheeling out of the water, and it was breathtaking. It's one of those moments where you're like, okay, get your line on the reel, get yourself organized, get focused, because this is a big fish. And it was weight in the net, released, still swimming around there. The guides in the lodge owner believe there's fish well over 25 pounds surviving in there. I haven't seen one yet. I don't doubt it, but still a memorable place to catch a fish of a lifetime. And you get the honor of putting your name in the book. Anything over about 15 pounds goes in there. You can see some of the guides' names. I think my name is third from the bottom there. Where you caught the fish, you can see Apps worm caught on there. Martin was my guide. It was 16.3 pounds. Just pretty incredible. And you get a good idea here looking at the flies. You can see mop fly, Apps worm, scud, pheasant tail, woolly bugger, black leech, scud, Mrs. Simpson, white bruise leech, green, that's a B for balanced leech with nano, copper johns, olive leech, and so on and so on. So you can see that not big flies, not terribly complicated. A lot of small leeches and things like that, small nymphs work best. So that, in a nutshell, is Jurassic Lake, Lago Strobel, the trips I do there every year. And I'll be going down again in the first 2 weeks of December. There's still space available. If this is something you're interested in, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. Even if you're going on a trip, you've already booked down there, happy to help. With the experience I've had going down there, from everything from travel to flies to gear to what to expect. And I'll also be going back again in 2025. So check out my website, philrowleyflyfishing.com, for information on that. I will now shut this off,
Yeah,
put my
amazing.
video back on, and answer any questions anyone
Nice
has.
work.
Dave?
That was amazing, Phil. Wow, that really, I want to go on this trip. Yeah, that's like it's.
Oh,
I've heard,
there's space still available, Dave. A
I've
couple of
heard a lot
spots.
about it. It's
Yeah.
amazing, yeah, those fish. So yeah, a couple of questions
Yep.
for you here. So the wind, you mentioned the wind. Are there
Yes.
any for folks, like casting wise? Do you have any tips? What are they telling you to get ready for this? Are you?
Well, it starts with your equipment. I mentioned I fish 7 weight rods. Your 9-footers get good line speed generated. The right line, that Rio outbound short, or if you're using switch lines like switch chuckers. So if you fish pyramid at all, any of the lines you would use there would be very suitable. So that starts. Um, for casting with the wind, again, you're never asked, unless you want to, cast with the wind coming straight in your face. It's either always off your shoulder or from behind you. So it actually helps you cast. And when we're fishing, indicators are an excellent way to deal with wind, because all you need to do is make a roll cast, get it out there, and let it sit and dance around in that chop. The trout love it. You don't have to cast every 5 seconds. Those lines are designed, they're very oversized heads. Them landing on the water is not an issue. You're not going to scare them that way on those choppy days. And just good casting practices, smooth application of power. Don't pick up the tempo of your stroke. I think sometimes people in the wind get excited and start going too fast. It's still the same nice slow stroke. Use that if the wind is coming and can help your back cast. Just let it blow the back cast in, and then tip your casting angle and get under it a little bit. If you've got the wind at your back, you're going to tip your casting angle up this way and literally let the wind pull your line out like a kite. You'd be amazed at how quickly you can adapt to it if you've got good casting technique. And again, you're not asked to make casts to the backing or 75-yard casts. The casts are short, close to shore.
Yeah.
Roll cast, I use a lot there.
Yeah.
Really easy to use. So it's not as, everybody sees that wind and goes crazy. And I'm not going to lie, the first time I saw it, I wondered what I was getting into on one of the days. But a lot of times you want the wind. On the flat calm days, it can be pretty spooky. They can be pretty spooky.
That's amazing. Yeah, that photo you showed of when you first come down the lake and just seeing that, it looks, it's spectacular.
It just takes
right?
your breath away, because everybody stops there and takes a picture, and takes pictures of the group or your friends or whoever you're with. You kind of pinch yourself. I'm actually here, right? It's kind of like Disneyland for the stillwater fly fisher. I'm actually here.
We had some questions on gratuities. I think there are some people that might be interested in maybe, future trips, but what should, I guess, hoping to save for the 2025, what should I expect to spend in gratuity service?
Gratuities, they're very, how they manage it is very discreet. You are provided with an envelope that gives the gratuities for both the lodge staff and the guides themselves. And I might even have it handy here. I think I do. So I've got the envelope here. So they'll give you an envelope like this with it all written on there. So for example, for the staff, they give you a guideline. So it's based on the quality. If you had a fair stay, and I've never even had anyone experience that, 3% of the rate, up to an excellent week would be 6% of the rate for the staff. And for the guides themselves, excellent would be about 10% of the rate. So I between 800 and 1,000 US for a week in tips. And the only other spending money you'd need to bring if you do the trips through me, I'm not trying to shamelessly self-promote, because all your costs have been taken care of before you land in Buenos Aires. The only thing you need to bring is money for your tips in US dollars and some spending money. And I usually cash in between 200 and 300 US, get it exchanged down there. Again, the lodge helps with those exchanges. There's money exchange places right in Buenos Aires. That's usually the first thing we do. And last time I was down there, $1 US was 1,000 pesos. We had a meal one night where the bill was 195,000 pesos for about 10 of us. And we had, a couple of drinks before dinner, wine, appetizers, full meals with tip. That worked out to $50 US. And you were buying prime rib that thick,
Wow.
strip loin that long, that thick for $13 US. So, and just, yeah, the food is, it's pretty darn good. Again, not a place to lose weight.
Yeah.
That would
No,
be a
and I'll
guide
give
for the tips, right? And again,
right.
people can email me and I can help them out. That's just for the lodge I stay at, Estancia Laguna Verde. There's another lodge on the lake, and I'm not sure what their tipping practices are.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah, I'll just give a shout out. I think probably most of the people that are going to be watching this either now or on the replay here probably know of you. And if they don't, I just want to give you a shout out. Phil is the guy you want to go out on a trip, one of these host trips, because not only do you get your a week with you hanging out, and I know you're going to be hanging out late with everybody, having a good time, but just
yeah,
in the future of your talks and your everything you're getting, in a hosted trip, this is the best you can get as far as Stillwater.
yeah,
So I just want to let
it's I've had a number of people now. In fact, this trip I've got coming up so far, the guests with me have all come with me before. They came back again. They had such a good time. They wanted to come back again, and they have. And again, I take care of everything for them. The only thing you have to take care of directly with yourself is your airfare to Buenos Aires, because everybody's coming from different places. And I can certainly give guidance on that too. Airlines to fly out of, airports to use, and airlines and things like that. And then before you take off on your trip, your domestic flight has already been booked by. I work with the lodge to help that. They know the local, they know the local rules down there, and can get good pricing on the flights. Our hotels, which are very comfortable. Usually it's double occupancy, but we can certainly get you single room as well. Very safe in the Recoleta area to walk around. Yeah, all your taxis, everything is taken care of. So again, all you need to factor in is your tip money and your spending money while you're down there. And there's, most of the time you're at the lodge fishing, the only spending money is, buying yourself, the hotel includes breakfast as well, a really nice breakfast buffet setup they have down there. All fresh foods, no egg-like substances that you see in some North American hotels. Yeah,
right.
all that. Really, you've just got to take care of lunch, which is typically, we got an empanada place you go for. If you've never had empanadas, they're fantastic. Many different fillings. We have a nice restaurant we go to dinner with and eat like, heads of state. And then a dinner in El Calafate. On the trip out, we are, you come out on the Saturday. We're driven back to the airport at El Calafate, hop your flight back to Buenos Aires that night. We spend the night there, have a dinner, and then you fly out the following evening. The Sunday is a little grueling because you're just sitting around all day waiting to go, but the hotel's great. We can check our bags safely and explore Buenos Aires a little bit, relax, late checkout, all that kind of stuff. It's
nice.
About as nice and relaxing as you can make it.
Oh, perfect. I got a couple of quick ones for you. So you mentioned the switch rod. So is this I mean, you're talking about using a standard like 9-foot, but then also going a little longer?
Yeah, I use, for many years, I just took down 9-foot 7 and 8 weights. Because I do a Golden Dorado week prior to this one as well. The lodge owner of Estancia Laguna Verde also owns Golden Dorado River Cruiser. We should have a talk about that one night, but that is chasing Golden Dorado. It's a refurbished luxury houseboat that is your base camp that moves around the Paraná River system. That's about, you drive about 3.5 hours west of Buenos Aires near the town of Rosario. Then you hop a shuttle boat they have, and they take you up to the cruiser itself, and then you fish out of flat style boats for that week. So I forget where I was going with that, but sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, you got me distracted too, because I was thinking about that same trip. We just did an episode with, I think, the set guys, and they were talking about this similar thing, but that's on my mind too. But what I was thinking was, so the switch rod or a longer rod is there?
Yeah, so I was going now where I'm going. Oh, so I take 2 8 weights now, because that's the rod of choice for the Golden Dorado River Cruiser, just for luggage weights. And then the switch rod I use is I use Mystic's M series switch rods.
Yeah.
It's
It's like 11 foot or something like that.
11-footer. Yeah,
Yeah.
same one I use
And
on.
are you doing a normal cast, or are you doing some sort of like a two-hand cast with that too?
It's a two-hand, just a roll cast basically.
Yeah, just a roll cast.
On the lake, you don't have to worry. You can do some single spay or some, whatever cast you want to do. But for the most part, you're just roll casting out. The drift is typically from left to right, the way the ambient winds go. And then you got to pick up, just quickly just drop the rod back down to reestablish your anchor up and gone
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
it.
switch rods work really well on the windy days, because you have that ability to reach out, to manage the wind a little better, and obviously that leverage on the hook set. But I tell you, I was sold on it a few trips before, but really sold on the last trip because I had a guest that brought one along who had been there previous by himself and joined me on my group. And he really opened my eyes as to what a valuable tool that is. And that was reinforced with the trips and schools I do on Pyramid Lake now as well. So just a valuable, again, I have the 2 8-weights and the switch spay. I will have 1 8-weight rigged with the Rio Outbound short, the other switch spay. And frankly, the third rod is there in case I have an accident.
Yeah.
Right. Most times it stays in the tube in my room the entire trip. Right. You could get away with 2 rods. There are a few spare loaner rods if you were to have an accident, and usually with a group, there's always spares kicking around, so it's not a big deal.
Okay. And then on the fish, Jurassic Lake versus Pyramid, they seem kind of similar. There's big fish. For you, you've caught big fish in both. Which one have you pulled out the bigger fish in?
Jurassic, but I'm
Yeah,
sure
it was because you had a nice
I
one at
fished
Pyramid too.
Jurassic
Yeah.
more. I've got 22 pounds. I think my biggest on Pyramid about 16, 17. So they're pretty close. You could and you're dealing with rainbows down there that are quite spirited. Of course, those Pilot Peaks in Pyramid are pretty spirited too. So one's you can say obviously Pyramid's North America's largest.
Yeah.
The Northern
That's
Hemisphere is home to the largest trout, and the Southern Hemisphere belongs perhaps to Lago Strobel or Jurassic Lake. So, but the whole thing with this trip is not just the fishing, which of course is pretty special, but the whole trip itself. It's a neat country to visit, and the food and the culture and the hospitality and the friendliness of the people. At the lodge and places like that is pretty neat. And the world travels there, so you're going to bump into people from Europe and other countries, which is kind of neat as well. So we had one time we were having dinner, a local Argentine couple who was going to go to California for surfing, was trying to improve their English language. So they sat down with us and established a friendship. We joined us for dinner after a couple of conversations, and we're having this great exchange, language exchange, word for this word. A lot of fun, a very enjoyable evening. That's really cool. A lot of fun.
Nice. Well, cool, Phil. I think we'll leave it there tonight. May remind everybody again if they're interested in hearing more about this, or if they want to find out where should they go.
Want more details, they can go to my philrowleyflyfishing.com website. There's my trips and schools page. That's again philrowleyflyfishing.com. They can also email me through my website. There's a contact button, or you can email me at flycraft, FLYCRAFT @shaw.ca, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. If they're even just remotely considering a trip, or maybe they book somewhere else and want to go and they want information on gear and flies and what to expect and travel, more than happy to help out. And of course, I think we still have a couple of spots left. I know it's October and I'm going in December, but flights, there's still some good flights available. And it's just a really quick, can get them hooked up and get them on the right track and get them going. And with every trip I do Zoom calls, at least 2 or 3 prior to the trip, where we have like this discussion we're having. We're going to go through all of the things, what to expect. So when they show up, they're arrived and prepared, and nothing's hopefully a surprise.
Awesome. All right, Phil, I think, we'll leave it there for tonight. And of course, we mentioned at the start, Littoral Zone, if they want to follow the podcast that you're hosting and in our network there, that'll be great. And we'll keep in touch with you and check back. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully in the near future, I'll be on that trip as well down there with you.
I hope so. I had a friend, just to close it out, who was a steelhead fisher like you, turned to me on day 3 and said, I haven't caught steelhead this big.
And there you go.
everywhere. So
That's
that was give you another barometer of, I don't want to
my biggest
oversell it, but there's
my
some pretty
biggest
large.
steelhead to date. I've got a close to 20 pounds, but I haven't gone over the 20 pounds. So yeah, I think I'd probably
Yeah.
beat that.
Yeah, like, as I said, day one you get the 10-pounder, and everybody, they'll take a picture of it, and then you'll bump into the people. Again, we're off in our little groups, and we meet for lunch. And how was your morning? I got 6 fish, I got 10 fish, 12 fish, whatever you got that day. Like any fishing day, it comes and goes.
Yeah.
And you'll see anything big? Nope, 10, 12 pounds. That's it. So 3 days in, they're already kicking 10-pound fish to the curb, right? They're
That's
on the
amazing.
hunt for something big. And I remind them. I said, when we talked first night here, the biggest trout you'd caught was 5 pounds, and you were hoping
Yeah.
to beat that. So that record was crushed,
That's
destroyed, eliminated. Yeah. So
amazing. Amazing.
pretty special.
All right, Phil. Well, thanks again, and we'll be in touch, and appreciate all the time tonight.
All right, Dave, thanks for having me on. I hope everybody enjoyed that. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. More than happy to help.
Okay. All right. See ya.
Take
Have a
care.
good night, everyone. Thanks.